Michael Jackson took a break from his tour Thursday to receive an award from the United Negro College Fund in New York. Among the famous faces in the crowd were Quincy Jones, Elizabeth Taylor, and Liza Minnelli. President Reagan sent a taped message, and Whitney Houston sang America the Beautiful. Michael received an honorary doctorate from Fisk University and made what was for him a long speech.
I can't believe I'm nervous.
Michael went on to thank God, his friends, and his parents, and also talked about why he was there.
About the United Negro College Fund, an education opens a person's mind to the entire world. There is nothing more important than to make sure everyone has the opportunity for an education. To want to learn, to have the capacity to learn, and not to be able to is a tragedy. I am honored to be associated with an evening that says this will never happen. Thank you. I love you all.
Thanks to a scholarship fund he set up and a recent benefit concert, Michael is one of the United Negro College Fund's all-time largest contributors.
I've helped many children, thousands of children all over the world. Cancer kids, leukemia kids.
He's a humanitarian.
The real Michael Jackson.
Hi guys, welcome to the final episode of season 1 of my podcast, Humanitarian, the real Michael Jackson. I'd love to bring you another season, and I still have a lot of people I want to speak with to tell their stories of how Michael Jackson helped them in their time of need, or contributed to their recovery from illnesses, or people that were just first-hand witness to his many humanitarian acts. But to bring you these stories, I really need you to subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, to my YouTube channel, and share the stories. There's so many great stories of Michael Jackson's humanitarian endeavours out there, and they're not something that the mainstream media like to talk about. So please share the stories and support the show, and hopefully I'll see you in season 2 of the Humanitarian MJ podcast. Now, I have 2 very special guests today. Michael Jackson donated many times to the United Negro College Fund, and to this day is one of their highest contributors. Kenya Gray was a recipient of the Michael Jackson Scholarship, and thanks to the fund, went on to graduate with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Mass Communication with highest honours in 1999. And in a full circle moment, she's gone on to become the Director of Scholarships for the UNCF, and now manages 2 of the 3 scholarships that she received: the Michael Jackson Scholarship and also the Janet Jackson Rhythm Nation Scholarship. So Kenya joins me today alongside UNCF's Communication Manager, Roy Betts. Hi guys, and thanks for joining me. How are you guys?
I'm good. Hey man, it's beautiful weather here in the Maryland area for sure today. Kenya, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm happy it's Friday. Got plans to see the Wiz tomorrow. Going to see the Wiz.
Oh wow!
Where's the performance?
At the National Theater.
Oh, National. Okay.
It's the pre-show before. It's the pre-tour before the Broadway. Debut in March or April, something like that. Either way, it's here in DC this week.
Awesome. Wow, good timing.
Well, yeah. Have fun. Well, cool. Paul, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you both for joining me. I know you're very busy. You guys are professionals. You do an amazing job with the work that you do. So thank you for putting aside this time to chat with me. Actually, I'm just going to grab my book. So a little introduction for you guys about myself. In 2018, I published a book called Humanitarian, the real Michael Jackson. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that, but that's a book that pretty much documents all the good things that Michael Jackson did. It details all the hospitals and orphanages that he visited, all the charities he supported, and all the people he helped. It's quite a thick book, and it goes into a lot of detail, but it's not something that's widely known about and something that the mainstream media talks about. And obviously the UNCF comes up in the book quite often. Michael donated to the UNCF quite a few times, and I believe through my research to this day he's one of the UNCF's largest contributors. So first of all, since 1944, the UNCF has raised more than $4.5 billion to help more than 400,000 students receive college degrees
Well,
at
that's
UNCF.
been updated.
Has it?
It's 6 billion now, more than 6 billion.
Wow.
And more than 500,000 and counting students today. Yeah,
And
we'll be
probably
observing our 80th anniversary next year. The actual birth date is April 25th.
That's amazing.
But we'll be celebrating year long, starting in January.
Kenya, I've read a little bit about your story, and I wanted to know, first of all, if you could introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a little bit about your upbringing and where you were raised.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, whatever you are in the land of Zamundas. I am Kenya Samuels Gray, and it's important to say that because I am a 40-something-year-old woman from Prince George's County, Maryland. So I am right outside of Washington, D.C., where I was born, where my parents were born and raised. And I grew up in PG County, Maryland, which is a predominantly African-American county, one of the richest Black counties in the United States. And so that plays an important role in my values and who I am. I'm the oldest of 3 children. I'm the only girl, which is, a very important thing to note, that I am my daddy's baby girl and I'm his oldest child. And growing up, the importance of education was always put into my life. My parents did not go to college. My dad joined the military before he even graduated from high school. So my parents have been together since they were 14, 15 years old, and this past year celebrated 51 years of marriage. And I came along 5 years after they got married, and one of my earliest memories is music. One of my very earliest memories, my dad had a reel-to-reel. He had those 8 feet tall speakers with like the styrofoam in front of them. And one of my earliest memories is eating that styrofoam. So I knew he was chewing through that styrofoam. So I knew that, as a 40-something-year-old woman now, that music has played such an, integral part of my life. My parents were relatively young when they had me. They were in their early 20s. So it was, all music all the time. My middle name comes from Stevie Wonder's daughter, Aisha. Life is Aisha, the meaning of her name. So that is where my middle name comes from. My dad loved Earth, Wind, and Fire. He loved Shaka Khan. He loved Phyllis Hyman. My mama loved Shaka Khan, loved Anita Baker. So music was always a part of my life. And when I was about 6, we sat down as a family and sat in front of a TV because they said there's a music video coming on that you should be impressed with. That video came on. It was Thriller. I ran for the hills.
Wow.
I ran for the hills. I don't remember the first time I watched that video in its entirety because I was scared. I was terrified. But I knew then that the legacy of Michael Jackson was something much bigger than myself. We sat and we watched Motown 25. I knew that the legacy of Michael Jackson would be something that was important in my life. Just knowing, just in our lives, Thriller and all things Jackson would come into my life. And when it was time for me to go to college, I knew that I wanted to go to an historically Black college. I was a fan of A Different World. I was a fan of The Cosby Show. And I was just a fan of being in spaces where people look like me. I grew up in a place where people look like me. I knew that going to an HBCU would just, enrich my life. And so I decided on Bennett College, which is one of 2 historically Black colleges for women in Greensboro, North Carolina. It is where the girl you are meets the woman you'll become. And because I was the first person in my family to go to college, we didn't know anything about how to pay for college. I knew my dad just said, you're going to college. I had good grades in high school, and all we knew was that if you get good grades in high school, you get a scholarship to college. That's all you know. That's what you're socialized to do. Work hard, somebody will pay you to go to college. Well, Bennett didn't pay me to go to college, but I was going to college.
Yep.
So I had to figure out what I needed to do to get in college and go through college. And so I was the person, they told my dad, hey, loans exist. And I, basically signed a 360 deal. I
Yep.
signed to pay my life and took out those student loans. But I worked hard, really, really hard while I was in school. And Bennett's such a small, intimate place where everybody knows you, everybody knows your capabilities, everybody knows how hard you work. And it just so happened that the people in the financial aid office knew that I had an unpaid balance, or I had loans on my account, or I was just deserving. Whatever they saw in me that I didn't see in myself, they stuck this application in my mailbox. They
Yep.
stuck a scholarship application in my mailbox. It was for a UNCF scholarship for the Michael Jackson Scholarship. I think it was for like $1,000 or $2,000. And back then, that was a lot of money towards your education. And I got it again, and I got it again. And one year I even got the Janet Jackson Scholarship because it was for students who were majoring in communications. Now, after I graduated from undergrad, I came back to DC to do graduate school at American University. And I got a degree in public relations, worked in public relations, but felt a calling to work with people who looked like me in situations and circumstances that might have been similar to my own. So I became a teacher. I became a high school teacher in Washington, D.C., where I met my husband, who was also a teacher. And we were in Washington, D.C. I was teaching English and journalism. And by happenstance, the kids in the class didn't know anything about HBCUs. They didn't know anything about college. They, barely knew the names of the schools they wanted to attend. And this particular high school that I worked at was having its first graduating class. It was a startup charter school having its first graduating class. So the students in those classes would just come to my office. I talked so much about college. I talked so much about my experience, probably because I was only 2 or 3 years out. And so it was still fresh in my head. It's 20 years ago now. They would come to my classroom and I would help them fill out college applications, and I would help them explain the FAFSA. And if they were comfortable, I would talk to their parents, like, do your FAFSA. This is what it means. It's not scary. And that transition from teaching English becoming the college counselor at this particular high school, because it was an unheard of thing. We all probably just had regular guidance counselors. And so, it kind of spiraled from there. And then the opportunity to take my talents and come full circle to a place like UNCF just kind of fell in my lap. Wow. And it was like literally full circle. It was, didn't you get that scholarship when you were in college? Isn't Bennett a UNCF member institution? They talked about that, on the Lou Rawls. How awesome is this? How amazing is this opportunity that just fell in your lap? That you can go and work at a place that, helped you get to the place where you are. And so starting to work at UNCF, one of the things they give you is a portfolio of scholarships. I went into scholarships and programs department, and one of the things they give you is the portfolio of scholarships that you're going to be managing. And the former director at that time was like, here's this endowment that you'll be administering. It's X amount of dollars. Here's the information on it. And lo and behold, it was the Michael Jackson. One of those scholarships that I was administering was the Michael Jackson Scholarship. And so for me, it was like, do I cry? Do I get up and run around this office? What do I do in this moment? But, just say, thank you, God, because if not for this scholarship that I'm holding in my hand now, I would not be able to sit right here at this office in this desk to be able to pay it forward and select other students who are communication majors, who are humanitarian, humanities majors, who are arts and sciences, give them the same kind of, unspoken support that this particular opportunity gave to me. And so I've been at UNCF 12 years now. So that was one of the first scholarships that I started managing. And all the way up until this year, I managed that scholarship where I got a promotion and moved into a different department. But it has been one that I have held near and dear to my heart. The person who is going to manage it next, I've explained all of this to her as well. It is, tried and true that scholarship has been around, many, many years. And it is, a grandfather, a stalwart, in scholarships and programs. And it is just heaven sent for me, for the hundreds of students at this point that have benefited directly from it. And we can't speak enough about just the philanthropy and the generosity of, Mr. Jackson and his family, and just how, UNCF poured into him and he poured right back into us. So that was a lot of talking, but I hope I did you some justice and answered, a lot of questions, but I'm gonna turn it back over to you.
Wow, thank you so much. That's an amazing story. You did really well. Thank you. I do have a list of questions, but you pretty much ticked a lot of boxes in that. And that's why I wanted to talk to you, because it's just how it's gone full circle is just amazing. And everything happens for a reason, right? There's a higher power at work there, I believe. I wanted to go back to when you got your scholarship. Was there an eligibility criteria that you can remember? You were told you had to work hard to get that scholarship?
Yes. So what I remember, because it was a long time ago now, I needed it at I think at least a 3.0 GPA. You needed to be a communications major, journalism or something in that realm. And you needed to, have some kind of unmet need. So if there's a balance on your account, if you, had some other, need for scholarship money, and you needed to be at one of UNCF's member institutions. So I checked off all those boxes, but pretty much the criteria hasn't changed.
And so as a student, does worrying about that financial aspect of your education, is that something, do you think, affects your studies or your mental health?
It does, because what I remember in retrospect, looking back, is that my dad tried to take out the loan for me to go to school and he was denied, but my parents had just moved that year. So now, many, many years later, I realized that you can't buy a house and take out a student loan in the same year. Like it doesn't work that way. But at the time, it was like I was denied. What are we going to do? How are we going to pay for my education? Because I didn't get any money from Bennett, but I knew that's where I was supposed to be. I came out of my first semester with a 4.0. My second semester probably with like a 3.9. Like it was that kind of academic pressure I put on myself to exceed expectations that probably nobody had of me, but I put on myself. Wasn't defined as anxiety back then, but very much would be anxiety. Today would just be called anxiety.
Yeah. And you touched on the fact that you received the Michael Jackson and the Janet Jackson scholarships more than once. And my understanding was the fund that Michael Jackson put in, I think it was 1986 or 1988, it was a $1.5 million fund that perpetually renews, earning interest, which makes it possible to continue to help I think it's 34 students per year, which would be like...
It varies, depends on the interest.
Oh, okay, yep. So that is a scholarship that will continue to be available to kids?
Yep. So because, like you said, because the interest is drawn on it, there's a finite amount based upon the interest earnings, and then we launch an application, and based upon the amount of money that the interest bears for us, we do a application process where we select students. So sometimes depending on how the markets are going, there's a robust amount of money. And some years it might be lean, but there's guaranteed to be at least one Michael Jackson recipient because that amount of interest earned is not going to be zero. But up to 40 kids some year, maybe down to 20 sometimes. It just depends, because it's not it's not a set dollar amount of money that the interest will draw down from us.
Yeah. Do the scholarships change or evolve, or are they basically the same as when they were created?
The dollar amount has pretty much been $4,000. And I'm pretty sure that probably changed in the 2000s, because I don't remember receiving $4,000. So it might have changed, but I know the dollar amount now is $4,000 a student.
And that $4,000, or that amount that the student gets, what can they put that towards? Is that just for loans?
So it's for cost of attendance. So the way a student, they're selected for the scholarship, and then their institution would provide us with their scholarship budget. So they tuition fees, room, board, health insurance, transportation, books and supplies. They would provide all of that to us. They would also provide us with any institutional aid or outside scholarships that they've received. And then the bottom line is their unmet need. So that gray area would be their unmet need. And we don't include loans in that number. And so if a student has a gap of at least $4,000, we would, apply $4,000, and the money is wired directly to the institution with, notice that says, hey, please apply this to the student's account for the academic year. And then the institution would kind of make the adjustment as to where it fits best. If it's loan repayment, then it's loan repayment. If they still have a balance, it's going to pay down the balance. And then we, make sure that both semesters are, taken care of. And so we half in one semester, half in the other semester.
That's amazing. That must be really empowering for you to be able to give that back to so many students. Do you have any standout stories about students you've helped and how it's impacted you?
I do, and it goes back to my own alma mater, Bennett College. And so, working at a place that also helps my own undergraduate institution is empowering. And one of my early years, application is open. I'm reading applications, and there's an application from a young lady who attends Bennett. And she, in her essay, she talked about, being in the choir. She talked about being a music major or a music minor. She talked about wanting to be a teacher. And she talked about the fact that she didn't know where she was going to college until maybe 2 weeks before college started, and how she was going to pay for it, and how her life she was also from Washington, D.C., how her life would not be what it is now if not for the opportunity to leave her environment and go to college. And I was like, this sounds real familiar. I don't know this young lady from Adam, but this sounds real familiar. So I'm looking, and I said, this young lady is at Bennett, so I'm going to find her. So, I select her for the scholarship, I award her, the money goes on her account, and I'm active in my alumni association here in DC. So I make my way, and I find this young lady, and I say, Sierra, I just want you to know, when I read your story, it reminded me a lot of myself. I saw myself in this essay, and I wanted you to know that you have a big sister in me. As your Bennett sister, you have a big sister in me, as somebody who's received UNCF scholarships, as somebody, who now administers UNCF scholarships. She was in college in 2013, 2014. She has since graduated from college. She is a minister of the gospel now. She still sings. I saw her maybe a month ago, and she told that same story about, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to do it. And miraculously, Miss Kenya came, from the heavens and helped helped me just get to and through college. She said, I graduated from college with no debt. And she said, I would go and I would take out all the loans at the beginning of the year. but I would work hard in the middle of the year to get a bunch of scholarships that would replace these loans. So she would apply for scholarships all throughout her school year, and all the scholarships she would earn would pay down her loan balance. And so she said, when I graduated from Bennett, when she graduated, I had no loan debt. And it, started with her being a Michael Jackson Scholarship recipient the same way I was.
And obviously scholarships is the things that you've looked after. Do UNCF offer other programs like mentoring, mental health services, internships?
So UNCF also, in addition to the scholarships, there is student professional development opportunities. So there are corporations that partner with UNCF to say, hey, I want students who fit the bill but may not get noticed in my large, internship pool. So I'm going to partner with UNCF to find the needle in the haystack student who we may overlook. And so they come to UNCF, they partner with UNCF to find interns for their corporations. And so in that, we are preparing students for the workforce, the workplace, and beyond. There are leadership conferences that these students attend. There are boot camps, there are hackathons, and all of this helps to create an individual who is corporate ready, entrepreneurship ready, is able to walk in the room and hold their head high as a person of color, as a Black man or woman, and say, I deserve to be here. I deserve this space. I deserve to be in this Fortune 500 company, and this is how I can contribute. And so with all that, that student professional development program, may have, depending on the agreements, because they all, individual donors. Some donors do have mental health and wellness components and have opportunities for students to speak with mental health practitioners, or the program negates, let's do group yoga. So they may just say, hey, scholars, here's this webinar link. And if you all join, what we're going to be doing is guided meditation. What we're going to be doing is hearing from a practitioner in the mental health space. Here's some study tips, take a break, meditate. Here's some yoga. Let's do some candle making. So it just depends on the program guidelines, the program's needs, the wraparound services that are offered to the students if the program negates it, so that the student is taken care of, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, if that's where they are, and financially, because at the end of this, we are relieving some burden off of your shoulders with a little piece of financial support, so that you can, focus a little bit on your studies, or a lot of it on your studies.
Yeah, you guys do an amazing job. I'm so admirable of what you do. So well done to both of you and to everybody in the team. I'm sure it's a team effort. And so congratulations. Is there anything else I had a list of questions, but you've pretty much answered all of them. You've spoken so well. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Is there anything you wanted to add that you wanted to speak about?
There's so much, but not enough, not enough hours in the day. I would just implore your listeners to, look into UNCF, look into historically Black colleges, support HBCUs, support institutions that you may not have heard of, because they're doing some amazing work. They're, small but mighty institutions, like my own alma mater, small but mighty institutions doing amazing work with the men and women who matriculate through their campuses. Take some time, find an HBCU, find a UNCF office, if you're in a place where UNCF office is, and participate in their activities. There are, fundraising efforts all the time, all over the place. There's mass balls and walks and, hat and glove tees and masquerade balls, and just opportunity to volunteer, because all of that time And those resources still help us to be able to pour into another student. If that's not your thing, and your checkbook is, the way that you talk, a check, we will receive a check at UNCF. We will receive a check at your favorite HBCU, because money is always needed to do bigger and better things with these students. If in your corporation you're like, I want to partner with UNCF to find scholars or to find future employees, talk to UNCF, because we definitely, there's a place for you with that. There's a way to continue to support Black students, students of color, get to and through college. And I just want to implore your listeners that there's no one way to skin that cat, but the opportunity for you to make a change and make a difference is always out there, and the door never closes. We may be off at 5 o'clock, but the work never stops. I will stop there, and I will let Roy close this out.
Well, I could not say how wonderful you have been. I know it's been a while since we have been able to make this happen. And Paul,
right,
thank you for your patience and your focus on this particular aspect of our work. Kenya is an outstanding spokesperson, as you can see. I'm going to have an offline conversation with Kenya about that, because she knows I'm in branding, marketing, and communications. And with her background in communications, I just don't see how you never wound up in our department, to say the least. But that's
don't tell people my
we'll
secrets.
Talk. Yeah,
don't tell people my secrets.
Yes. I hear you. We'll talk about it.
If you get a pay rise, Kenya, remember I hooked up this chat.
Yeah,
right. I got you. I got you.
Paul, just to echo what Kenya has so eloquently expressed, direct your viewers, listeners to uncf.org.
Yep.
uncf.org is where you go to take this journey with us. All of our latest events, our latest scholarship offerings, our latest activities to expose students, faculty, administrators, parents, with respect to what other opportunities UNCF provides.
Thank you both so much for your time. As I said, it's very much appreciated. I know it's taken a lot of, I've nagged you, but I'm so glad we got to connect, and I got to hear your story. Undoubtedly, the UNCF is a big part of Michael Jackson's humanitarian history, and likewise, I suppose Michael Jackson is a big part of the UNCF's history. So for people to hear a bit more about both of them is a good thing, and I think it's something that should be spoken about and people should learn about. Thank you both. Right. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
All right, thanks. All right, thank you both.
All right. Yep. Bye.